Brandon Aiyuk will not become a Pittsburgh Steeler. He is re-signing. I want to say re-signing. He is signing a massive contract extension with the 49ers. Sorry. It's just sorry. That's the best way I can address it. Happy Friday, maybe, but happy Friday, Football Friday here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. My name is Chris Halicke, Greg Macafee to my right over here. So news dropped yesterday afternoon. He ain't coming to Pittsburgh. What was the reaction that you had whenever that took place? And you know what? I'm gonna could have give everyone a challenge here in the chat. Everyone else, put your reaction. If as long as I can broadcast it on here, try to avoid the 4-letter words, but put your reaction to when the news broke, and I will put it on here.
My reaction was it's finally over. That's kind of what my reaction was. This has been such a saga from the very beginning. It's been ongoing. It's been, oh, he's coming to Pittsburgh. No, he's staying in San Francisco. Oh, Cleveland offered him all this money. All of this stuff has just been kind of ongoing. And obviously these situations play out from time to time across the league. And obviously the Steelers were tied into this one pretty heavy. But yeah, I mean, it's over. He's staying in San Francisco. He got the money that he was looking for. The one thing that I thought was pretty interesting that I saw, I think Schefter posted it. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Chris, but he signed the same contract that was offered back on August 10th.
So Ryan Williams, Brandon Aiyuk's agent, disputes that.
Yeah. Okay.
So
right.
I'm gonna go with the agent over the reporter on that one.
Yeah. I didn't see Williams's dispute, but I just saw that. I thought that's kind of interesting. But the saga just played out for too long. I'm glad a decision was finally made, and now the Steelers can find out where they want to go next.
Yes, I do think. Okay, so I'll first give my reaction, and Greg, if you want to take over putting comments on, because I'm sure that the reactions will continue to come through.
Yep.
My reaction was also, thank God it's over, but then my reaction was, okay, well, what's next? What's Omar going to do? Because okay, on the surface, this does seem like it was an Aiyuk or bust situation. Now, I had some text conversations with people, last night after this happened. I put it in Friday Insider. There seems to be if I could best describe what the actual strategy here was, is that yes, they really wanted Aiyuk, but they wanted him on their terms. They weren't going to acquiesce to what the 49ers wanted, and they were willing to wait for it. And that if it wasn't going to happen, then they would have other plans. And so I don't know what those other plans are. I wish I could sit here and tell you, oh yeah, now they're going to go pursue DK Metcalf, or yeah, they're going to go pursue Devontae Adams or anybody else. Those two guys could be, on their radar, but to me, just my own kind of feeling is that those are more trade deadline type acquisitions. I don't think here, just barely over. I mean, we're now 6 days away from the actual season opener next Thursday night, that either Seattle or Vegas is about to deal their number one receiver. So maybe this is a situation where they get a few weeks into the season, things look terrible, then they're willing to part ways. I don't know. But either way, they have to figure something out, because if George Pickens goes down with an injury, maybe that's ultimately what has to force their hand here. If George Pickens goes down with an injury, they are screwed. And that has really been that's really been the entire thing here is that ever since Deontay was traded, it's like, okay, well, you need somebody else next to George. And this is not a slight on Van Jefferson, who I do think that if you have low expectations for Van Jefferson, you probably need to raise him a little bit. He looks like a really, really good receiver. When I say really, really good, I'm truly meaning that, like, probably more in terms of how fans would do. He's a solid guy. He's a really good number 3, I think.
Yeah. No, I can agree with that.
But if George Pickens goes down and he slots in as your number 1 receiver, that's a huge problem. That's always been the thing here from the get-go.
Yeah.
Now, the other shoe that can drop here in terms of what's next is the Steelers have been putting their own contract extensions on hold while this thing played out. And for everybody who's concerned about them not possibly extending Cam Hayward or Pat Freiermuth or Najee Harris or possibly even Jalen Warren, who I don't think that they're really going to try to extend him before the season because he's a restricted free agent. They still have rights over him. However, I do know, and this is the most that I can say, is that activity has picked up in that regard since this happened last night. That's all I can say. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that later tonight or tomorrow or 3 days from now or whenever that an extension is definitely going to happen with 1 or 2 or 3 or all of those players. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that activity has picked up. That's the most that I can really say. And honestly, probably best defines the way I can put it, because obviously there isn't an extension to report or announce or anything like that. But I would be shocked if none of those guys get an extension before the season begins.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
that's another thing. That's another thing to drop to.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've said all along that they were waiting to see how this Aiyuk situation played out before making moves, which I think, in my eyes is kind of the smart move. You see how much money you have committed to one person before you can, commit more money to another. It kind of, paints the financial picture better for the front office moving forward. And so that was the always move. It was something that I kind of always expected would happen. So yeah, we'll kind of see how it plays out over the next, couple days leading into the next week.
Yeah. So some other news from today, there were more additions to the practice squad, and Sebastian brings up one of them here. Ben Skoranek, wide receiver 2. I wouldn't call him wide receiver 2, especially since he's on the practice squad and not on the 53. But he is an interesting addition because he can be a very interesting guy to be elevated on game days. I'd be a little surprised if he doesn't eventually get a helmet at the very minimum to contribute on special teams. And so if you want to give the list of players that were signed to the practice squad today, Skoranek's one of them, but he was one of the more interesting ones to me, and a surprise one that didn't re-sign.
Yeah. So we touched on a couple of these already. Offensive lineman Doug Nestor was one that we reported on already. Running back Boston Scott. Those two became official today. The other ones were linebacker Devin Harper, linebacker Adi Do you know how to pronounce it?
I have no idea.
Ogundeji is how I'm gonna pronounce his last name.
There
so
you go.
That sounds
doesn't
correct.
sound too bad, honestly.
Yeah. Offensive lineman John LeGlue, wide receiver Brandon Johnson, and wide receiver Ben Skoranek. The one that you mentioned that didn't come back that we thought, I was pretty positive that he was coming back. Like after practice, Thursday, I was pretty positive he was Wednesday, sorry. I was pretty positive he was coming back. But as John Rice Plumlee, he signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars practice squad today. Puts him closer to home, closer to where he went to college in a way. Obviously the Florida weather is always nice this time of year, and through the
nicest
through
relative.
the fall.
Nicest relative. Yeah. I am getting a very rude reminding of how much I despise the humidity.
Yeah.
Because these days here in Western Pennsylvania of 88, 89 with 60 to 70% humidity can shove off. I'm done with it.
Yeah.
I honestly, I would rather have the 100-degree heat with 15% humidity. It's the humidity
You
that
know?
kills me more than anything. So
Yeah.
Florida, no, thank you. I'm good.
Yeah. No, I lived in Arizona for 2.5 years, 3 years, and their summertime is bearable compared to like Florida, probably where you lived in Texas, the
Yeah,
high heat up here as well. I don't, it's a dry heat is the joke.
it is.
But yeah, it was easier to manage than a Florida summertime.
It just doesn't feel like it's on you.
No,
Like
yeah,
that's the best way I
yeah,
can describe it when
yeah.
you have that type of weather with this really
Hmm.
humid weather. It's that I feel like something's on me and I can't get it
Yep,
off. Like it's just,
yep,
the dry heat. The only thing that sucks with the dry heat and the really really hot days, like 108, like those days, it's just like it does feel like you've walked
yeah,
into an oven. And then when the wind blows, you don't get relief. It just feels like somebody's blowing
yeah.
you with a hot with a air dryer,
Yeah, like, I mean,
but yeah,
the easiest way I can describe it, I went to school at Arizona State, and their journalism school is in downtown Phoenix. So as you can imagine, there's not a lot of there's a decent amount of parking, but there's not a lot of free parking. And so all of the people in my class found these like 2 blocks downtown, and it was about a half a mile away from the building, and it was all free parking. So we had to walk about a half mile to classes
yeah,
every day in long sleeve shirt and khakis
yeah.
in 110, 120 degrees. And there was one day we cooked an egg on the sidewalk. That was pretty funny. But the dry heat, I mean, I just it's more manageable than the humidity. I'm like you, I'm a fan of the dry heat rather than the humidity. But I'm also a winter fall type of guy.
Yeah, Brandon says, "Bro, 115 with no humidity is still miserable." I'm not
No,
saying
yeah,
that.
it's just easier to manage.
That's how I feel about it. And like I lived in North Texas for 23 years. It's I don't do well with humidity. I feel like
Yes.
I have a weight on me and I can't get it off. So
Yes.
that is what I'm talking about when it comes to this. Anyway, we've been talking about weather for way too long.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, so yes, some more additions to the practice squad today. Somebody did ask earlier. I don't think I'm going to be able to. Oh, here we go. I actually found it real quick. Sebastian asks, "Does Fitzpatrick
Yep.
signed elsewhere?" He has not, to my knowledge.
I haven't seen anything either.
He was another guy who, now along with Plumlee, that I thought was nearly a lock to re-sign with the practice squad. I would still be shocked if he doesn't re-sign. Maybe he's got more options than initially thought, which is why it hasn't happened yet. I think they have more, like one more slot. I can't remember.
I think they have one more slot. They've
Yeah,
signed 15 right now. I think you get 16,
I think
and
so.
then the 17 is an international slot. I'm pretty sure.
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it was 16. So they would have one
Yep.
more slot left. So maybe they're holding
Yeah.
that for Fitzpatrick or
Hmm.
whoever else. I don't know. But yeah, I would be shocked if he didn't. Again, it felt like a lock with Fitzpatrick. It also felt like a lot with Plumlee. So Plumlee's gone. Who knows?
Hmm.
Maybe Fitzpatrick has a couple of different situations, a couple of different offers on the table, and they might all be practice squad, jobs, but it might be a situation of, oh, okay, well, this is closer to home, or the taxes aren't as bad here as they are. I don't know.
Yeah.
Obviously, whenever you're talking about signing practice squad, finances are a little bit
Yeah.
more tricky.
Hmm.
So it's not like somebody's, signing $30 million a year, which, talk about California taxes, man. He's gonna be walking away with probably half of that in his pocket.
That's
Anyway,
how it goes. That's how it
hey
goes.
man, hey man. I don't think he's gonna be complaining though.
Nope.
So anyway, but yes, I do think now when it comes to where the Steelers go, the big question is what's next, and I think that question is still very open ended, just because we don't know where to go. They have all talked, and you even talked to players in the locker room. Now, granted, I had a reminder of this. If you haven't read today's Friday Insider, first I urge you to go read it. But a lot of the times when you talk to players, they're like, well, they're going to say stuff in order to appease and in order to, like, they're not going to throw guys under the bus or anything like that. And that's why I'm urging Friday Insider, because I spoke with multiple, I would say several players who all, and they all spoke without attribution, which means no consequences.
Mm-hmm.
They can't be held accountable. The coach can't go to them and be like, why'd you tell this reporter this or anything like that? And they, gave some really honest answers. Sometimes that's what it takes. And, but even when talking off the record with players, you don't get a lot of, throwing guys under the bus or anything like that. Even when you're talking, and I've had some guys say some questionable things off the record, but I'm just saying, even then, even talking off the record with these guys, they all really believe that this receiver group is very underrated.
Yeah.
I don't know if they just think the world of Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin and maybe even Roman Wilson. I saw somebody else brought up Roman Wilson earlier, that maybe he can contribute, a lot sooner. Maybe he can. And maybe one of those three guys just breaks out, just becomes a legitimate outside option. And then all of a sudden, receiver doesn't look so bad. And so everybody could be freaking out for no reason, but still on the surface, it's a gamble.
Yeah.
And I do think that, maybe we're all wrong here, but again, it's a gamble. And I don't think, whenever the urgency is where it is right now with this team, to at minimum try to win one playoff game, much less win a Super Bowl, which is ultimately their goal. But man, they just got to break this streak of not winning a freaking playoff game.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you've got that sense of urgency, going with a gamble is risky at best. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's gonna be interesting how it plays out. I mean, like, even if we've talked about Van Jefferson a lot, throughout training camp, and about what he was able to do in Los Angeles and everything like that. And I keep trying to envision him as a solid number 2, but it's just like, I think he would be so, like, if you get one more guy in here who can play on the outside, who can complement George Pickens, I think that makes this offense even that much more dangerous. Because I think he's a really strong, like, number 3 option. Like, he's a guy that can stretch defenses. That's what he did a lot in Los Angeles. And he had a great year. And he said he's trying to return to that form. He said he had a couple off years, and he understood that, and he's trying to get back to that form. And so I think if you can get one more guy out there who can be an option on the outside, and can draw attention away from George Pickens and even Pat Freiermuth, and I think it just makes this offense so much more dangerous in that perspective. And so just I think adding to the wide receiver room is pretty crucial.
Yes, I would agree with that, and there have been, obviously, whenever when this happened last night, the reactions were all over the place. Obviously, there was a lot of doom and gloom, but then there were some people that were talking about, for example, Ben brings this up, to a certain extent. He says, if we're running the ball 70% of the time, maybe it doesn't matter. I still think it matters. And some people will look at Arthur Smith's offense, especially what he did in Tennessee, and be like, they had AJ Brown and then nobody else. I was like, maybe go back and watch the film on Corey Davis back then, because I don't know if Van Jefferson is Corey Davis in 2019 or 2020. He was. I don't know. I'm not talking about numbers. Like, some people might be like, well, Corey Davis in one year only had 500 something yards, and then Van Jefferson with the Rams in his best year had 800. I'm not talking about numbers. I'm talking about the ability to execute specific routes, specific things, to be able to also contribute as a blocker, like certain things. And Ben says it here too. He says Corey Davis was underrated. I agree.
Yeah,
I don't think that I think just because the numbers weren't gaudy doesn't mean that he wasn't a legitimate number 2 receiver.
Yeah.
I think for example, I'll put it this way. If the Steelers were to have gotten Noah Brown, I would feel a lot better about this. I would feel a lot better about this group because you had a guy in Noah Brown that could come in and execute a lot of the things that are required of that receiver in this particular offense. And so that is what I'm not doubting Van Jefferson's ability to do other things. He looks like a really, really slick route runner. He's going to be able to get open. The question is, he's not like Allen Robinson, who's willing to run into a C gap and take on a linebacker. So you have to have other options you're not going to be able to have one guy address all those things if you were to bring it, as opposed to bringing a Noah Brown or something like that. So,
yeah, no, I agree with you.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, because, and so, like, I don't see Calvin Austin as being that type of guy who can go in and just be a big blocker. Same thing with Roman Wilson. Roman Wilson, good blocker in college, but he's not necessarily the biggest body. And if not denying his, I don't think Roman Wilson's ever going to turn away an assignment. If his assignment is to go run through the C gap and take on an off-ball linebacker, he'll do it.
Yeah.
He has that mentality. It's just, how is he going to be at executing that?
Yeah, they're just I don't necessarily want to put all three of I don't want to put Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin, and Roman Wilson all into the same category, because I think they're all kind of built a little bit differently.
They are. Their games are very different, yeah.
Yeah, but they're also none of them are kind of built like Corey Davis. He was a kind of a bigger bodied guy. He was thick from what I remember. And he was able to throw those blocks and everything and provide, that aspect of the offense. Yeah. And I don't see, I'm not saying that they're not capable of it, but I don't see them, doing it to the level that maybe Arthur Smith's offense would need, if that makes sense.
If you got, I will say this, I was actually really surprised. And maybe it's just because whenever he was out there as a pass catcher, that he didn't move the needle at all.
Mm-hmm.
But Allen Robinson felt like a good fit in this offense. And maybe they just need Allen Robinson from 3 or 4 years ago instead of where he was, last year. Because looking at some of the concepts that they have called in the preseason and watching how the receivers are having to contribute as blockers, it is going to be something. And maybe Ben Johnson is that guy that eventually can get there. Maybe that's it. I don't know. And he's already got a rapport with Russ from Denver last year. So I don't know. Maybe they have a guy already internally, but it just would seem a lot better if they would. And I think that's the reason why there was so much hope for Aiyuk, because Aiyuk really is a do-it-all receiver. He can literally do everything, including block. He's a heck of a blocker. So it sucks for the Steelers. No doubt about it. And it also sucks because they haven't added to that room. Just receiver after receiver after receiver have gone off the board, and the Steelers haven't been, I'm not saying they haven't tried, but they haven't gotten any of them. And so that can be painful. If you don't get the guy, that can hurt. And so, we'll see what happens from here. The thing that's going to cure all of this worry is winning games. If they go out there week 1 and in Atlanta and they get a W, I don't think a lot of people are going to be worrying too much about receiver. It can still be a concern for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But the worry doesn't worry as much if you're winning football games. I think that's the biggest cure. So,
yes.
Yeah.
I agree. Winning cures a lot of things.
It really does cure it. It really does. Which is why one of these days, whether it's this season or 2 years from now or whenever it is, I'm somewhat of an agent of chaos, and so I just want to see this happen. I want to see the Steelers win another Super Bowl, and I want to see them win it under Mike Tomlin.
Yeah,
because then there are going to be a lot of people be like, okay, well, what are you going to complain about now? Because if that happens, What are you going to complain about? You have nothing else. Like I kept telling, like, okay, for example, I covered the Rangers for 2+ seasons, the Texas Rangers for 2+ seasons. And the biggest gripe at that point, which is hilarious from that fan base, was that the owner wasn't spending money.
Mm-hmm.
That, they were just losing season after losing season. And like 2021, they lost 102 games and they just weren't spending any money. And so they were like, dude, this is the Dallas market. Like, you have to be spending money. And then lo and behold, they go and sign Corey Seager to a $325 million contract. They signed Marcus Semien to another, I think it was $175 million contract. They like $500 million dedicated to 2 players. I'm like, you can never complain about this ever again. You can never complain about the owner not spending money ever again.
They're when it comes
because I helped them win a World Series too. That's the other thing. And so, like, if Mike Tomlin ever wins another Super Bowl with this team, you have nothing else to complain about.
It's
that's just
funny.
the agent of chaos in me.
It's funny because, like, in my short time, like, covering the team, one thing I've become like not necessarily fascinated with, but like just like appreciative of, is when Mike Tomlin is on the field. Like, there's not a lot of times, like, when we're talking to him in press conferences or when he's walking around, like when we're in sight and things like that, where Mike Tomlin smiles. And when he's like talking to his players and things like that, you just see him get that grin on his face. And it is like the one thing that I've loved, like, capturing in photos and things like that, because you don't see a lot of it. And so if they come out and win another Super Bowl, I can just see that grin on his face, just haunting everyone that has hated on him over the past couple of years.
Great comment from Ryan here. Fantastic comment from Ryan here. Mike Tomlin is bad at challenges. Such a great comment. That would be the complaint. Week 1, he'd lose 2 challenges and be like, "Oh, come on." The one thing that I always tell people when it comes, like, especially when it comes to the Tomlin haters, if you want to, whatever you want to call them, it's fine. And I always preface this by saying the man is not void of criticism.
Yeah,
he's not void of criticism whatsoever. But the one thing I want to tell them, or that I pretty much tell them every time, is like, I wish you could actually go watch Mike Tomlin run one practice.
Yeah.
Just watch him run. Like, really watch him the entire time, the couple hours that they are out there, and watch him the entire time, and then try to tell me that he's a bad coach.
He's everywhere.
It just doesn't, like, you can't. Like, I have seen more than enough in... I've done 1 full season, and now I've gone through a second training camp, a second preseason, and he's the same guy.
Yeah. That
I've seen in 2 training camps, 2 preseasons, and 1 regular season. He's the same guy. And every time I watch him, it's just like, I don't understand how anybody, again, not void of criticism. Results are ultimately which is why we say winning cures a lot of things, because results are ultimately what dictates how good somebody is at their job.
Yeah.
And results right now are not in his favor. They haven't won a playoff game since the 2016 season. Since the 2017 season, it's been a lot of blech. It's been a lot of 9-8. I understand they were 10-7 last year, but it felt a lot more like a 9-8 season, and they snuck into the playoffs and then got their butts kicked. He's not void of criticism, and I think that's one of the reasons why there is a sense of urgency. I don't think that just comes from Art Rooney II. I really do think that comes from Mike Tomlin. I think he has serious regrets about not getting a guy such as Marquise Pouncey a Super Bowl ring.
Mm-hmm.
And I really sincerely think that he, even more so than the way it played out with Pouncey, that he doesn't want guys such as Cam Hayward and TJ Watt not getting a ring. I really think that this man is truly motivated by not only his own legacy, but the legacy of those that he coaches.
Yeah.
And it's if you put, to me, the good outweighs the bad when it comes to him. And we'll see what happens. And I think that's one of the reasons why receiver has been such a dominant topic with this team, is because it does feel like the one glaring hole on this roster. And because if they have that glaring hole filled, this is a roster that looks like it can at least compete in the AFC. I'm not going to say that they're a team that's bound for a division spot or for bound for a conference championship spot, but at least a team that can at least try to make a run at one of those things, or at least win a freaking playoff game.
Yeah.
Am I out of my depth here?
No. I mean, we talked about it all throughout training camp that, obviously there are some holes on this roster. I think wide receiver was the biggest. I think it was the one they needed to address through training camp. I think, I put it in the feed yesterday. There were some people that didn't necessarily agree with it, but I feel like Omar Khan had you reported on this, that they had confidence in that they were going to get a big receiver. Yeah. And I feel like they were just kind of waiting on that, and waiting on that maybe made them miss on some other opportunities with other guys. And now they have to go out and, go to their plan B and find a different way to address that room, because plan A is in San Francisco. So, but I think, like, outside of the offensive line and the injuries they've gone through and the struggles they're having right now, I think this offense is like a wide receiver short of being really good. A true number 2 wide receiver short of being a really good offense. They have all the pieces. They have 2 really, really good running backs. They have a plethora of tight ends who can contribute in the passing game and the blocking game. I think Pratt Freiermuth is, in this offense, is on the verge of possibly like a career best season. I don't know if you agree with that, but I think he could be heavily involved in this year and have a really good season. I think George Pickens has looked really, really good throughout training camp. I think he's kind of morphing into a true number 1 guy. And I think they're a number 2 short of allowing these other guys like Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson to settle into true like support roles that can, find their own niche in the offense.
Yeah. Really quick comment here. What Super Bowl team won recently with a bottom quarterback? Nick Foles. That's my answer to that.
Philly special.
Yeah. Listen, like, and don't get me wrong. I have repeatedly said it on here, and I'm gonna say it again. And for everybody who knows what I'm about to say, they're probably gonna roll their eyes and be like, "All right, Chris, you say the same thing every time." But I'm gonna keep saying it. If you go back through the history of the game, 75%, like nearly 3/4 of the teams that have won the Super Bowl, had a quarterback that was either already in the Hall of Fame or it will be in the Hall of Fame, like undoubtedly. Well, I'm talking about Ben Roethlisberger, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Patrick Mahomes. Like, these guys will definitely be in the Hall of Fame. I'm not even counting Russell Wilson in that, even though I think he might get in there. But I'm just saying, like, I'm not denying the fact that the best way to try to win a Super Bowl is to have a franchise quarterback. Steelers don't have that right now. They have an aging Russell Wilson and a Justin Fields who has all the potential in the world, but still has a lot of questions to answer. But the only other way that, like, the best way throughout the history of the game to counter that is to have a dominant defense. And the Steelers at least do have a chance of having that this season. And so if they can be good enough on offense and that defense plays to its potential, they have a chance to compete. I'm, again, not talking about like, oh, they're going to be in the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that. Yeah. But they have to have a good defense this year. That is ultimately, like, I don't think we talk about that enough. And there's been, and maybe now that this Aiyuk stuff is behind us, we can wash this off of us. We can just go shower this off. And then when we come back on Monday, we can start talking more about, okay, how is this team going to win? And it ultimately is going to be with defense.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a kind of identity of Mike Tomlin teams is the defense has always been strong. Ever since I've been around Pittsburgh, ever since I've known what a Pittsburgh Steeler is, the defense has been the identity.
Yeah.
And, I think that's been the case. And I think that it's become so consistent and it's a thing year in and year out that it's just like kind of gets glossed over and we don't nearly talk about it as much. Like I think this defense could be really, really good this year. And
They were
and
sixth in scoring
obviously,
last year.
yeah. And obviously the question marks have been on the offense. The major question marks have been on the offensive side of the ball. So that's what controls the conversation and everything like that. And maybe that's why we haven't talked about it as much. But this defense has looked really good this year through training camp.
I agree. And the thing is that we haven't even seen the defense with TJ Watt on the field. We haven't seen the defense with Cam Hayward on the field. There's still a lot of, as Mike Tomlin would say, meat left on that bone for us to pick at when it comes to the defense, because we really haven't seen what this defense is going to look like, because we haven't seen Patrick Queen that often in the middle of the defense yet. Now, they need everybody to be healthy. They need to somehow avoid injuries. If that defense stays healthy, on paper, that should be a top 5 defense. It should.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any excuse. And if it's a top 5 defense, and I'm talking about nearly across the board, I'm talking about in at least points and yards against, should be a top 5 defense. If it's not, then okay, yeah, this team isn't going to go anywhere. But if this is a top 5 defense, and and on paper it should be, then again, if the offense is good enough, and I think that's one of the reasons why people have been so focused on the receiver position, because then that makes everything feel a little bit more solidified on the offensive side of the ball, because then there's no glaring hole on that side of the ball. And right now there's still a glaring hole. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up there. We're at, nearly 37 minutes into the show. So we'll probably just go ahead and wrap it up. But everybody have a great weekend. Really appreciate it. I got a fantasy football draft here coming up in 3.5 hours. I'm excited. I'm picking 7th. Did the draft order this morning. Ugh.
It's not bad.
But a 10-team league though. I'm not
it's
too
a weird
stoked.
spot.
I know. I don't like it. It's like, it's like, like I think, and the guy who made the biggest stink about the draft order, like whenever I told everybody was
last.
No, he was 4th. So it's the opposite one. Whenever you turn things back around, and it's a snake draft. So when you go back and it turns back around, I'm then 4th, and then he's 7th. So we're both the most unhappy with where we were. So because like if somebody who was like 3rd or 5th or something like that would have complained, I would have been like, I'll trade you. I don't care. I'll trade you. But yeah, 7 is tough. Somebody says 7 is a tough pool. Yeah, it is. It's
it is. It's a tough.
Cody asks, who are you going with round 1? Let's do a little fantasy thing before we
there you go. I like that.
Round 1, 7th overall, PPR league, 10-team league. Most likely, I think the 2 most likely players I'll have available will be either Amon-Ra St. Brown or Justin Jefferson. I might go with St. Brown over Jefferson, to be completely honest.
Honestly, Jefferson's been like really highly ranked in leagues, but I just don't like the quarterback situation.
I don't either.
And I think it takes away, I think he's one guy I would avoid. That's just me though, unless he falls into like the second round.
Second round would have him.
Yeah.
If he is there, I'm sorry. If he's there, whenever I'm picking in the second round, yes, I'm taking it.
100%. The first round, I'd avoid him. That's just me. I like Amon, and Amon St. Brown plays such a huge piece of that offense too. And I don't know. I'm a huge fan of Jahmyr Gibbs too. I like him, but he's more.
So I did a mock draft this morning, and my first 2 picks were Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, so
I like that. I like that. Those are my first 2 picks. I think my second receiver, my second receiver was Brandon Aiyuk.
There you
go. My second running back, I think, was James Cook. I want to say.
I like
okay
it.
about that. And then I didn't draft a quarterback until the 8th round, and I took Jordan Love.
That's a good pick.
So
8th round. That's a good pick.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's okay. I'll put it this way. I have always been very, very much a proponent of don't take a quarterback early.
Yeah, me too.
And I went against that last year and took Patrick Mahomes in the 4th round. And anybody who had Patrick Mahomes in fantasy football last year knows the pain that I went through. It did not go well. Yeah. So, I'm pretty much avoiding. I think 5th round might be the absolute earliest I'll take a quarterback, and it just depends on how the draft falls at that point. So,
I agree.
Yeah, I think I'll take. Oh, Randy's got a fun little comment here. I don't know if we can. I don't know. He says DK Pittsburgh Sports should have a separate division for fantasy football. It's a lot of fun, and I play for no money. It's a blast. No, like this league I'm drafting in tonight is for no money. I run this league. It's just for fun. I do have a money league that I play in with Dale Lawley, and that one gets pretty competitive. So that's a 12-team league, and I'm picking 6th in that one. So I like where I'm picking in that one a lot better.
Right in the middle. Right in the middle.
I like that one a lot better. And I have the first pick of the 2 in the middle. So, but yeah, no, I think, I don't know, I'll figure it out. I have a couple people in this league that I kind of have pegged of how they're going to draft too. So that helps. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Wait, did we talk about this yesterday? You said you had a fantasy draft too. Did you, who was your first round pick again?
So I had an auction draft.
That's right. You said auction draft. That's right. Okay.
Yeah. I had another. I had another one a couple weeks ago. That's with friends from when I lived out in Arizona, and it's not exactly like. It's like I have like 2 or 3 friends in it, and then it's like a bunch of their family members. Yeah. I've won it twice. I'm the reigning champ. Nice. So I can't remember who I had keepers. I kept Lamar Jackson, and then who else? I can't remember who I kept second. It's one of like my least like important leagues that I pay attention to. Yeah. Like last year, the strangest thing happened last year. We couldn't find a date where we could have an actual draft. So the commissioner was just like, all right, this is the date the draft is. If you can draft, you draft. If not, everyone's going to be auto draft. So there was about 3 people who drafted last year, and I ended up obviously taking advantage and winning. So,
actually, Matthew brings up a good question here, because I said earlier in the show, I said when we come back Monday, he actually has us. He asks, is there going to be a show on Monday? Actually, no, there won't be a show on Monday because it is a holiday. Okay. Monday is Labor Day, so there will be no show on Monday. So we'll be back on here Tuesday, even though there will be Steelers practice on Monday. We'll at least have one practice and a Tomlin press conference to talk about the next time we convene on here. So, Brandon, good question here. I like this question. Never done fantasy. Do you find it takes away from the game itself? Like, I only care about wins and losses. So the one thing that I would suggest, like if you're like a diehard Steelers fan, which, if you're watching the show, I think I have a pretty good betting chance that you're at least a Steelers fan. It makes you watch the game through a little bit of a different lens, especially if you have money on the line. But I also find myself enjoying watching football that's not Steelers football.
Yeah, no, I'm the same.
And Jim brings up a good thing. He says, I never draft any Steelers. I don't know if I'd go that far, but if you're a fan of a team, you have to be able to see your team through the appropriate lens. Don't take George Pickens in the 2nd round. I'll put it that way. George Pickens is a nice, solid wide receiver 2 in fantasy football. Like that's mid to low end wide receiver 2, really solid, really, really great wide receiver 3 or flex. And Swan here says I took Pickens in the 6th round. That's probably
I think that's solid. Yeah. Seeing he's going to get a majority of the targets on the Steelers.
Shoot, man, I didn't take Brandon Aiyuk until the 4th round, and I would think I would classify Brandon Aiyuk as like a top 10 receiver, like bottom line top 12 receiver in the NFL.
Yeah.
So you have to be, you have to be able to see your team through the appropriate lens. But again, I find myself enjoying, like I find myself invested more in other games. Like, I have, Josh Allen going in this game. So now, like, I'm curious to see what the Bills are going to do.
Yeah.
And plus, there's so I just find myself enjoying football more and being more invested in football beyond just the one game that I want to watch, either as a fan or for our situation, the game that we have to cover.
Yeah, like it's funny for me because it's funny when you get to like a Sunday night and you get something like this with Cardinal Seahawks and you're like, you got one game left and you're down by like 10 points and you got a player and they have like a kicker in the game or something like that, and you're watching it till the very end. Like I can't remember how many times last year where I was laying in bed and I just scrolling through my phone just waiting for updates to see if Josh Jacobs got 10 more yards or something like that to see if I won the game. And those type of things are always fun for me with fantasy, because then you set it up. You got the one game you want to watch, another game you want to watch, and then you got the red zone. So you can see everything going on and keep track of the fantasy players. And so it just always makes it interesting. That's why
the one thing that you have to avoid is allowing it to really control how you react to certain things whenever you are invested. For example, I remember the night that what happened with DeMar Hamlin happened.
Yeah.
That cost, because that game never finished. That game ended up costing a lot of people a fantasy football championship.
Yeah.
Yours truly. Like I was one of them. I had if a certain, like, I think I had like one player, I don't remember the exact situation, but if what was supposed to happen happened in that game, which was very, very likely, I would have won. I would have won the championship. But there are a lot of people that reacted first and foremost about like, well, what's going to happen with my fantasy team? It's like, dude, the dude went into cardiac arrest on the football field. That's the only thing that I have to like really try to let people like to warn people when it comes to being invested in something like fantasy.
You gotta put it into perspective. Like it's like I think it gets a little much when people are threatening, like sending players DMs on IGs and threatening them and stuff like that. Like that's too much for me. Like, come on.
Anderson Moore reminds everyone from a couple of years ago when they played in Atlanta. Last time they played in Atlanta, actually, Minka ran out of bounds after an interception, and I won the game after the interception. But most people complained because they needed the touchdown. Like a lot of anybody who had the Steelers defense, it just absolutely was just that cost me 6 points. Like because
have you ever won a game on a stat or a matchup on a stat correction?
I've both won a game and lost a game.
Yeah. It's always interesting.
I've both won a game. No, but my worst experience in fantasy football, and this was stupid. This is the same league I play in now, but this is a long time ago. This is when Jamal Charles was a rookie, I want to say. So this dates this. But this is whenever we had the championship game. It wasn't like a 2-week thing. It was 1 week, and it was on the final week of the season, which is stupid because you could have
the backups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jamal Charles came in, and anybody who remembers this game from Jamal Charles, he went off for like 50 something points. I was in the championship game, and the guy who I was playing picked up Jamal Charles in that game, and I lost big time because of one freaking player.
It's like Alvin Kamara blowing up for like 50 points like 2 or 3 years ago.
I'm gonna look this up now. I guarantee you, all I have to do is type in Jamal Charles fantasy game, and that, like, I guarantee you it pops up like fantasy record. See, it comes up Jamal Charles fantasy record 59.5 points. That was my championship game, and I was playing against him. 59.5 points. It was just the worst. I was so mad.
It's how it goes. It's how it goes.
I went to work the next day because I worked with the guy who I played with, and he just came in with the biggest smile on his face. I was like, what the heck happened? It was so funny. Anyway, all right. We went on for like another 13 minutes talking about fantasy football, so we will catch you guys later. You guys enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the 3-day weekend, Labor Day weekend. We'll be back Tuesday, should be 4 p.m. I think would be a good time. Mike Tomlin's press conference will be Tuesday at noon, as it always is during the season. So that is the first time I would expect to have a Tomlin Tuesday. And so we should have plenty to talk about next time we convene together. So in the meantime, have a good weekend. Catch you guys on the Flippity Flip.
See you later, guys.